All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hope everybody's been staying safe and enjoying this fun and interesting time. All righty. Let's take a look here. So, week 12. This should be pretty fun. So in last week's class, we went over setting levels, panning on the mix. I did get the guitar DI or the solo in, and it should be in the folder now, which is great. Never heard from Philip, so we are going to work with the scratch vocal that we had originally. As you can see, I am in headphones this time. We're gonna do things a little different. So typically when we do a stream, we have the microphone mute out because we're using our big monitors. For this one, I wanna be able to talk while we're doing stuff. So just switching to headphones, which might be more in tune to what you may be doing with headphones anyway. So that can be fun. So hopefully we're all in headphones or on studio monitors. So let's take a look here at what we had. So we had all of our drums here, levels, panning, bass, acoustic, our electric guitar solo, our guitar, pedal steel, our pipes, our scratch vocal, and then these guys here. So I'm gonna get rid of our effects for now. Okay, so EQ and compression is what we're gonna be working on. This is a pretty big thing right now. So let's start with EQ. We'll start there. The mix sounded pretty good as it was. We did a decent job recording, so it sounded pretty good. Let's go ahead and play it just to see what it sounds like for now. And then we'll start diving into some EQ. So here we go.
They found John and Lee on a log in the road. Unaccidental story sure is told. Said it was around a double-out buck. Everybody knew Johnny didn't know. How Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground. It was 35 miles just south of Blacktown. Prison guard said he was trying to escape. Daddy said he hated that it happened that way. If he'd have kept his mouth shut, he might be here today. Another little Dixie Mafia hits. There's a mob out here in the sticks. Don't cross them, won't give them any shits. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. State senators don't mean shit. Got you a little Dixie Mafia hit. Granddaddy moved here, he was running from the law. Daddy killed a man in a bar brawl. If you see him coming at you, you better step aside. The same goes for me, 'cause I'm the next in line. We call a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit.
Alrighty. So that was the whole song. So starting with EQ, let's dive into the drums first. So let's start here with the kick. So with EQ, what I typically like to do is kind of use it to tame, to clean up, and to basically make our puzzle pieces that are going to fit together at the end of all of this. Now, again, we've already kind of leveled things out. We've kind of panned things around, so that gives us a good start of placing everything where it needs to go. But now we need to start getting things to lock together. So with EQ, I typically do a few different things. One is cleaning up or getting rid of sounds that we don't like or don't want. And then two is accentuating or bringing to life the parts that we do like and really making them pop and stick out of the mix. So with that, let's first look at this kick drum here. Oh, that's on all for a sec. Let's see here. Okay. So let's kind of dive in right here. Okay. So with that kick drum, definitely got some good low end to it. Not a lot of attack on the top. Kind of almost like boxy or honky sounding. So let's look with an EQ. So again, we're going to use just stock stuff in here. So let me grab the stock EQ, which is this 7-band right here. So before we dive in, let's talk about the settings on here. First thing we have, high pass filter, low pass filter. What does that mean? These are filters. They're going to sit on either side, and if it's a high pass, it's going to let the high pass through. If it's a low pass, it's going to let the low pass through. Some EQ companies or people will call this something different as like a high cut or a low cut. So it's funny because if it's a high pass filter, you're cutting the low end. So high pass is low cut and a low pass is a high cut. Just with this one, they happen to name it high pass and low pass. So what do these look like? So we'll snap one in here, drag it out. Okay, this is basically just a big, like not shelf, just a curve here that we can adjust. So the Q is how tight or wide it is. When you go to something that's parametric, where you have ability to control, like this, a notch filter, typically the Q tells you how wide or how narrow it is when you adjust. When you have this instead, your Q actually goes into a per octave. So for example, this one right here, if I set this for 200 on the frequency range, it starts at 200 and it's going to cut 6 dB per octave. So 200, so at 100, you see right here, it's cutting at -6. So -6, so we've gone from basically 0 to -6. Now it's a little different because of the type of curve this has. If we go to like 12, you can see that kind of brings in that bottom. So now if we go down to 100, you can see it's 12 here. I go up to 20 or 18 is the next one. So at 18, there's our 100. We're on 200 right here where this dot is. And then 24. So a lot of these will go from say 6 up to 48 sometimes. You can get a little carried away sometimes with these on how tight your Q is. It just depends on what you're trying to clean up. Typically I'll go 12 to 24 depending on what I'm doing, sometimes 6, it just depends. So to start, I'm gonna pull this back. We're gonna listen to the kick drum and I'm gonna slowly bring this in. So let's see what happens here. So you can see as I pull it in further and further, it's getting rid of everything. Now granted, I would never EQ it like this, but it just kind of gives you an idea. So kick drum is fun. You kind of have to make a choice typically on your low end because we typically have kick and bass. Those are our two low end. If you have other synthesizers or keyboards or anything else going along, it might depend on what's kind of like the bass dominant thing, but we have to make that decision. What's going to really live down there? Is it going to be the kick or is it going to be the bass? For this song, for me, I think I want to make the bass be the one that kind of takes up some of that lower end. So I actually might EQ this or pull a little bit more of the low end out of the kick drum. So let's see here. If I do that. So as I pull it in and out, hopefully you can hear some of that like lower rumble kind of go away. Now I'm doing this at 6 dB per octave, so it's not like super, super tight, like if I were to take it up here. So if you can hear this or not, I'm hoping you can. With it this tight of a Q, when it's off, and I'm at 80 hertz, when it's off and it's just normal, there's a lot of like this ooh kind of thing going on where it's really big and deep extended after the kick. So it's like boo, 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 boo. When I have it in, it's more of a boom, 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 boom. It kind of tightened up that low end and really brought it in a little bit. So just because of the kick drum that was used and the way it was played, I might end up doing this because we still have a kick sample that we can mess with to add things. So we have to kind of make a decision on blending these two together. But for now, I think I'm going to start here. With cutting like this, with low, cutting out all the lows, is something I typically do on pretty much everything. There's a lot of low end information in pretty much everything that doesn't need to be there. A lot of microphones record down to 20 hertz or 50 hertz or things like that. And they can be put on sources that may never have that kind of information there. So it might be something you want to cut and get rid of. Even if you can't hear it, I guarantee you it's probably there and you can clean up a lot of headroom and get rid of a lot of stuff because low end is where all of your energy lies. So if you ever have a mix that's not working for you, you feel like you're running out of headroom, or like, man, like I just can't make things louder. It just, I'm peaking, or I've already maxed it out. If you haven't cut low end out of things that don't need it, that could be an issue, because it could just be buildup of noise or AC hum or anything that's just down there that's just building up all this energy that doesn't need to exist. So I'm going to start there. Let's keep going here. So let me grab this red one here. So this is on a shelf setting. So a shelf, to show you, looks like that. So you can kind of see to wherever you start your EQ from, and then it will either go back or forwards. This one is a low frequency shelf. I can also do parametric. So parametric, again, we can adjust with the cue. We can go wide, we can go narrow, do all this kind of stuff. Sometimes searching for frequencies, you might want to do something like this. I'll typically boost like this around 6-ish, and if I move this around, so let me grab a frequency here. You can kind of hear the buildup, and you can typically find the fundamental of whatever instrument you're working with this way. So let me take the that high pass filter off. So again, for this song, for me, I actually like it around that 100 point right there, because it's a lot more kind of punchy. This is actually closer to what you would typically hear kind of with old school rock, like classic rock, etc., because they didn't have the ability to reproduce a lot of that super, super low end. In fact, R&B is a great example of where the bass is the one holding all the low end sound, and the kick drum is more of like this pat-pat, or just kind of like this attacky chest sound. It's kind of what I think I might shoot for on this one. Now, again, you can EQ this differently if you would like to. You're more than welcome to go in and make your own choices. And again, use this kind of a idea where you take a band, boost it up, 6, maybe 8 dB. You don't have to go super, super crazy. Take your cue, which is how narrow it is, narrow it up a little bit, and then sweep around and try and find either frequencies you like or frequencies you don't like. So for this next one, let's search for something that sounds kind of funny. Here we go. So right there, kind of this ha-ha sound, almost kind of cardboard boxy sounding. So what happens if we pull it out now? I'm gonna widen it up. I'm gonna take it in and out. So it's in, out. In, out. So doing cuts like this can kind of help clean up some of the nasty sound you don't like, and you can kind of bring forth things that you do like. Typically, I will try to cut before I will boost anything too much. It really depends on what I'm going for. Again, I think that was like an 8.7 dB. I typically don't use this kind of EQ where I can see very much. This is how I started EQing, and this led me to use a lot of visual when I was EQing and not using my ears. So I had to kind of get away from this kind of UI and go with something that was just knobs, where I wasn't actually looking at it, because it looks like, oh my gosh, I'm pulling out so much right there. That's crazy. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It matters what it sounds like. So you have to use your ears with stuff like this. There are fundamental frequencies on every instrument. I want to say I put a sheet in some of the files, like the extras. If I didn't, I will put one in there. That kind of breaks down certain instruments and their fundamental, like, here's the good stuff, here's the bad stuff, etc. And they are guidelines. Not every single kick drum is going to have to be EQ'd the same way. It depends on what kick drum it was, what pedal it was, who was playing it, what kind of music, what heads were on it, all of these things, what microphones, where you place them. They all have a very, very big impact on what you're going to have to do later on. For this one, I felt like he didn't drive it a lot, like really like drive into it. He was just kind of like hitting his ba ba, almost letting the beater bounce off. So you get more of this kind of woofy, boomy sound compared to really driving in the beater and getting like this ba ba kind of like punchy attack sound. So let's keep going. The one thing with this, I do want a little bit more presence, more attack, just to kind of know that it's there. With low end, we feel low end. We feel it, but we don't typically hear it. It's not something that it's like, oh my gosh, I can hear so much low end. We tend to feel it a lot more. The reason we hear low end is from the top end that goes with it. That's why when we're EQing bass and like kick drums, we, especially in the live world, we add a lot of top end to it to kind of get the pat, the smack, the attack, all those kind of things. The story Metallica taping a 50-cent piece to the head, and then they would hit the 50-cent piece to kind of get more attack out of the drum, things like that. Because when you hear it, when you hear the top end, the attack, the punch, and you feel the low end, then it all comes together cohesively like, oh my gosh, that's such a big kick drum or such a big bass or whatever it happens to be. That's where we get all of that stuff from. So let's look for some attack in this kick drum here. So just right there, that's 2K. I boosted it up a little bit. Let's search around. Let me tighten this up a little bit. Let's keep searching. It's definitely that kind of upper mid-range right there, or mid-range. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now granted, you can hear other things in the background. You can hear like the snare brightening up, things like that too. Let's go really high with this. So that has a lot of attack when we take it out. Sounds kind of muddy, kind of just not really there. But that, adding all that attack in, now I probably won't add that much in, but that all of a sudden it's there. Let's compare that to to our sample kick drum. Here's our sample kick drum. Hear how much attack and just smack is in there. So it kind of gives you an idea of like a super tuned, crazy kick drum from a sample. So for this, I did kind of like some of this mid in here. Let me take this last one. This is our highs. So you see, like, I'm boosting 12 dB here at 10K, taking it out. There's no difference. There's nothing going on in that kick drum right there. If anything, it's just adding maybe air or something, but that doesn't really exist. Either that mic didn't pick it up, the kick drum wasn't actually producing anything there. So sometimes like that, boosting information that doesn't exist on that instrument does you no good. So you kind of have to know your frequency range in each instrument. And again, if I haven't put something in all the files, I will, because this is really good information just to have. So let me take it in and out. I'm going to bypass the entire EQ and we'll put it back in. Back in. It's tightened up a lot. Sounds really good. Okay, let's put our sample with that. Now we EQ'd in some extra attack onto our standard kick. The sample's providing a little bit extra for us, which is great. I mean, it's kind of what it's there for. It's a tuned sample that's been EQ'd and compressed and all this kind of stuff to make it sound exactly the way it needs to sound. So if I take out our EQ with the sample in, kind of seem to tighten up and have a nice little bit of low in there. Okay, So let's keep going. Let's look at our snare drum. Let's grab an EQ. All right, same idea. Let's grab our high-pass filter. If you have questions, feel free to type them in. Matt is actually downstairs with the computer watching. He can try and answer questions for you. If he cannot, I can look through them later and we can answer them then after the stream. I'm just kind of up here by myself today, so a little bit different setup. All right, so I'm just kind of rolling off until it starts to sound like I'm going to get rid of things that are actually there. Like there, I've taken too much of the snare body out, so let's go back. Yeah, I like that. All right, this snare drum, first off, needs more snap to it. So I'm just gonna grab this up here, this high shelf. Let's keep going here. Go higher. Now, of course, again, you hear the hi-hat get brighter too. You hear that start to come out a little bit more. Because that microphone picked up all that extra stuff. Let's do some digging in here. Maybe that's that sound. Out. There, kind of brighten it up, so makes it sound good. All right, let's look at our snare sample too. You hear all that smack and stuff on there. All right, take the EQ out. Back in. Sounding great. Now again, a lot of this, I'm just using my ears. I'm just listening of like, listen to the music that you like to listen to. Listen, pick out each instrument. What does the kick sound like? What does the snare sound like? What do the toms sound like? You have all the information because you listen to music. That's just what you do, right? We all love to listen to music. We have the artists we like and we dislike. We have those albums that we love, those songs that we love. Listen for these things of what you like about it. You really love the kick drum. What does it sound like? Is there a lot of attack? Is there a lot of low end? Is it really punchy? Is it big and boomy? You have all the information you need. You just have to transfer it to here and use your ears to make those adjustments to see, like, does this sound good? Yes or no? No? Okay, pull it back down or move along. Does this sound good? Does that sound good? You just have to do it over and over and you keep doing it. All right, so let's look at the worst mic. This was our dick mic, crotch mic, etc. Oops, wrong one. Haha. Old habits die hard. All right, for this, I'm gonna do something a little fun. I'm gonna roll off lows and highs here. Let's look at our mid-range here. Again, there's that kind of that boxy sound. So let's take that out. Now I'm going to use this one here. Just kind of widen this out. Now you can see the colors here of what I'm changing, but look at the white line. So this is like what our EQ is actually kind of doing here. Let's listen to all of our close mics now. Oops, out of samples. Take the EQs out. That's what we started with. Put it back in. again, like that. The kick drum, some of that low woofiness is gone. It's still big. It's still fat and punchy. The snare's brightened up a little bit more. We can hear the attack. All these little things that just kind of made a difference. So let's look at our overheads next. Here's our overheads. So let's grab an EQ. Same idea. Let's roll off some stuff here. Start with that. I'm just going to option and transfer this over so we've copied it over. So here's something that's really interesting. So I haven't touched the input or the output. But watch these meters up here, the in and the out, when I play this again. You can see on certain hits, it is quieter. We haven't changed anything in the upper. All we did was just took this, around 100 hertz and we rolled it out. We've already taken back a little bit. So there was stuff there that we just couldn't hear or couldn't perceive in that signal that's now gone. We fixed that already. So we've already just gained that little like 1 to 2 dB, however much of extra headroom. That was stuff that we can't really perceivably tell that it was ever there, but it was. It was there, and now it's gone. We just gained that back. All right, so let's keep going with our overheads here. So something a little different with this. If you remember, we didn't have any tom microphones at all. So I'm going to go search for some tom fills here. See if we can find any. Might be some back here somewhere. There. So let's just grab this for a quick second. Let's come back here to our EQ. All right, I'm going to solo up one of these. So that's what I'm after. I'm after those toms because we didn't mic the toms directly, so we have to get our tom sounds out of our overheads so we can find those. Right in there. Again, looking for that boxy kind of haw sound. Okay, let's do that there. I'm not going to copy this over. Let's listen to our other side real quick. Because we had one on the side of the hi-hat, one on the side of the ride. So let's listen to our ride one, because that's where the floor tom was. So let's see if we can find the floor tom in the ride side overhead. Let's find that honky. Let's find presence. Okay, let's put both in. Take them out. Back in. Out. I'm going to set this up a little bit more. to all our drums so far. Oh, without samples. Take them out. Kind of flat. Put them back in. So we had some presence to kind of bring out the stick attack, let's bring out the snare a little bit more. We had a little bit of funky kind of body sound in here and for our toms. That's kind of helped bring out some of the overtones of the toms a little bit in presence. And we just kind of cleaned up some of the low end. All right, let's look at our rooms. So on this one, we did a little different than we had recorded before. So this is our mid-side technique. So again, we had one microphone recording the middle, and then we had a figure of 8 microphone recording the sides. We took a duplicate of the figure of 8 mic. So we had 2 of them. We flipped one out of phase, and then we ended up with this sound. So they do sound further away because they were further away, but we can kind of accentuate that with EQ. When you're EQing something, when you EQ something brighter, when you add presence, which is like that upper mid-range, usually between say like 2 to 5K, or that like up air, like the air presence, so say 5K and up, things sound closer to us because typically that's where we get all of our detail from, especially in vocals. It's we start to hear everything coming out of the mouth, hear all those little nuances and noise. So if we add presence, because we literally call it presence to make it present in the mix, if we take that away, things would sound further away. So let's do that with these. I'm going to put a low pass or a high cut in, and let's pull this down to say, we'll go to 6,000, just round number. And then I'm going to put it on each track. Let's see what happens. So again, this is a high cut, low pass filter, 6K on all of our rooms. Take them out. Put them back in. So immediately to me, it seems that the room is a little bit bigger or a little bit further away when those cuts are in, because we're taking out the high end. It doesn't sound as close. It sounds like we're further down the hall, like you're walking up and you're like, hey, somebody's playing drums down there, and you kind of get closer and it gets brighter and brighter. That's kind of the idea. So you can fake things being further away or closer just with EQ. This kind of helps us when we start getting into reverb and delay next week. We can use EQ as well to kind of place things further further back in the mix. I know I'm kind of pointing closer to you, but getting further in the mix or coming closer to you. So you can use EQ to do these kind of things, which is really great. Also, I need to make sure that we do our cut here on the low end. And for this, I'll probably go, I'm just going to eyeball it. We'll say 120. Let's pick a number. We'll see what happens here. Yeah. All right. So let's see what all of our drums now sound like. I'll even put the samples in this time. All right, and let me go to a different part of the song. We'll go back to the beginning here. Okay, here it is, with EQ. Right, taking it out. Back in. Cool. All right, let's look at our bass real quick. So our DI. There's our mic. Back to the DI. So the DI actually seems to have a little bit more of like a honkiness, which I actually like quite a bit. Now we did have this EQ on here just to do the phase flip. I'm going to get rid of this. We're actually going to change this to a 7-band, and we'll do everything at once. So go to a 7-band. Make sure to put the polarity flip back in. Okay. I EQ bass a little differently because we have two, right? We have two of them. So bass, again, low end for feel. That's what we feel at low end, big bass. But we get our attack and where the bass is sitting from the presence, from the top end. So you can either do this with one channel, you can EQ both, but what I like to do is split the difference. I'll EQ one for lows and one for highs. I'll typically listen back and forth. Most of the time I use the amp to get my higher sound because it typically has some kind of grit or grind to it. Most bass players like to push their amps a little bit harder, get tubes to saturate, get whatever that kind of just a little bit of grittiness helps them poke through. Not all bass players. For this example, his bass DI sound has a little bit more good honky mid-range that's going to poke through compared to the bass mic. If we listen to him again, this is the DI. The mic. It's got that big round fat sound on that mic. So what I will do, we'll grab our high pass filter here. I'll set it to we'll go to 12. And I'm going to set this for, let's start at 180. Okay, so I'm rolling 180 hertz out of the bass DI. So what I'm going to do, I'll come over here. I'm going to do the opposite. If it'll let me. Let's see if it'll let me. It will. Complete opposite. So let me open these both up and we can look at them. Okay, so DI on this side. So we're at, change to 12. So we're at 12 at 180. And this side, we're 180 at 12. We're going the opposite way. So literally, they're mirror images of each other. So here's a DI. Got rid of all that low end. Here, I'll take it out. So there's the low end again. So take all of it out. So I'm just after that top end. Here's the bass mic. Put that EQ back in, or take the EQ out. I mean, it has decent up there, but so now we put them here. I'll actually put them together. Okay. Take the EQ out. Oh, granted, I can't do that, can I? Hold on. So it's our bass originally. But now I can blend and use them to my advantage. So one thing I will do on this bass DI, same idea, just gonna get rid of stuff that we just don't need on the bass. It's a bass. Like, go in there somewhere. So I can boosting it crazy here, 1-2K. I mean, there's a little bit of change, but not much. Let's go further down. So there for a second. So it sounds kind of funky by itself, but remember, right in this area, this is about 300. That's where we cut on our drums. We were cutting out the boxiness. So now all of a sudden, the bass is kind of taking up that area that we were cutting out of the drums, as well as taking some low end and some high end. So let's see what it sounds like with everything now. I'm going to take that one mid-range out. Kind of helps it poke through a little bit, lock in. I'm going to boost this low end now. Okay, so again, we've got it sitting down there with our kick drum. So our kick drum, we kind of boost around that 100 point. We cut a lot of that low out. I still feel there's a lot of low, especially from the sample. I'm gonna cut a little bit on our bass. Not that much. That's a lot. Let's back that off to like 60. There. Take the EQs out. Back in. So all of a sudden you can still hear the punch and the kick, but you have the bass too, and they're starting to play together really nicely. Okay, keep going here. Let's listen to our acoustic. Now I'm gonna listen to this with everything else. We kind of have our foundation, our drums and our bass, they're kind of set. So let's stick the acoustic in here. So in this song, because we also have electric guitar, pedal steel, the vocals, everything else going on, the acoustic's not playing a major role. It's more of a rhythmic thing for us to follow along. So let's grab an EQ and take a look. Now, the only thing with this is it does start the song. So we need it to sound good at the start, but also sound good in everything else. First thing, let's roll off some lows. Always do it. All right, let's search around this acoustic. There, it's a little bit of boost to low end, just because again, it's going to be by itself for a minute. So again, there's that presence range, that like in between 2 and 4, 2, 5K, somewhere right in there. Let's look at the air. Back in. So we did a lot of boosting here. We did a little bit of cut here, but you see we put a lot back in. So let's look at the level on that. So you can see right away we've boosted a little bit. So this is where inputs and outputs come in handy. Most EQs are going to have this. You can level this back out. Because again, we already set our levels. We really don't want to mess with that if we don't have to. There, about 2 dB. So we added, by adding all of this information in, we've added about 2 dB. So let's see what it sounds like as a mix now. Take the EQ out. Back in. Great. Starting to poke through a little bit more. All right, let's go to our electric guitars. So the electric guitars, I'm going to solo these up for a second. So these are different. Why are these different? Because we use 2 different microphones. So we have the choices to blend the 2 together. So it's both. Do one mic. Let's do the other mic. So that one, a lot more low end on that one, more rich sounding. So there's our presence. So just from those, because we use 2 microphones, we now have that ability to not just EQ, but we can blend those 2. So for fun, let's just solo those up and get our guitar sound just from the level. much liked it where I had it. Needs more. We need to make it kind of poke through a little bit more. So EQ. So instead of EQing the brighter mic, I'm going to actually first EQ the darker mic. Oops. Again, old habits die hard. All right, let's go back to this. Okay. So let's roll off the low end. Need to always do that. Okay, and let's look for some presence. That's nice. Again, I have both mics going too. So I'm doing this together because I want to hear what they both sound like because we're going to use both. Let's keep going. Let's look at this other mic. So that adding that back in kind of has a punch to it. So let's hear everything we've done so far. So that's basically going to be our drums, our bass, and this electric guitar. Take the EQ out. Back in. Kind of helps those sit forward a little bit more. So let's look at our steel. So this is a little different. We took a DI, which I processed before it came here, just added a few little things, and then we've got the actual microphone. So let's compare the two. Let's get that part where he really gets into it here. That's the DI. That's the mic. So for me, that DI could be brightened up a little bit, kind of poke through. Oops, I keep doing it. So used to doing that. All right. It's got a nice like warmth and richness to it. Same idea, looking for presence. Okay, take it out. Back in. Not a crazy difference, but there's a little bit more to it. So let's hear everything that we've done so far. Again, this is just EQ. tightening up. All right, let's look at our vocal. So this was a scratch vocal that we did. So this was on a dynamic microphone, so not a condenser, which means we're probably going to have to brighten it up a little bit more. So let's see what's going on here.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, the story sheriff told. Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt. They found John and Lee on a logging road.
Now with Philip's voice, he's actually got a really nice voice. It's easy to record. But let's look for some stuff here that we kind of clean up. So first things first, let's check out and see if there's anything in the low end that we like or dislike.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, the story sheriff told.
That low end is nice. It actually sounds really good for his voice. All right, let's look in this mid-range right in here.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, the story sheriff told.
There's nothing too crazy in there. Even if I were to tighten it up, I don't know if I can really find anything that's like, oh, I don't know if I like that. For me, specifically for my voice, I typically have to cut out between 700 and 1K. It's the nasally. It's down right in here. That's where the nose, the nasal sits. I typically have that kind of a voice. So I typically have to pull that out. But for him, I don't know if I have to do anything there.
They found John and Lee on a logging road.
I mean, I can boost it. I can really find it if I need to.
A hunting accident, the story sheriff told.
But as it is, it sounds pretty good. I mean,
said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew.
Maybe just a tiny, tiny bit, but I don't even know if we'll need it. All right, let's look for some presence.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, the story sheriff told.
Let's find some air.
Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt.
All right, we'll start there. His S has got a little hard, so when you're boosting air, you can get a lot of that sound that comes out a lot stronger. We're going to fix that with dynamics when we get into compression. So we pretty much EQ'd everything. So let's take a listen. Here it is.
They found John and Lee on a logging road. A hunting accident, the story sheriff told. Said it was around a double-out buck, but everybody knew Johnny didn't hunt. Now Jimmy Wayne's shop burned down to the ground.
Back in.
It was 35 miles just south of Mactown.
So right there, that S got really hard. Okay, so let's look at compression. So let's go over some quick compression things here. I'm going to grab our stock compressor, which is this guy right here, Dynamics 3. Okay. So this compressor has a few different extra features that some compressors don't. I'll pull up some others so we can kind of look. So this is a variable threshold compressor. What do I mean by that? So this line right here, this arrow right here, or this knob that says thresh, this is our threshold. So when a signal goes past our threshold, that's what activates or starts to activate the compressor. When it hears or sees audio go past it, the compression then kicks in. So that's basically where we say, I want you to start compressing here. Our gain is our makeup gain. So when we're compressing things, we do typically have a ratio, and the gain makes up anything that we've lost. Our ratio, which is right here, this tells us how much dB over the threshold it will, the signal can go, and the compressor will only let 1 dB out. So a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 dB is going to go over that threshold, but only 1 dB is going to come out. So if 6 dB goes over, then only 2 is going to come out, and vice, it just keeps going up. And you can adjust this, all the way down to, 1-to-1. So 1 in, 1 out. There's no compression there. 1.5, very light, all the way up to 100-to-1 or infinity to 1, or it's just a brick wall. So literally 100 dB is going to have to get past that thing before it ever lets 1 dB out. So it's just going to just hold it right there. It's not going to let it move from a certain point. So Typically when working with anything compression, I'll go anywhere from say 1.5, maybe up to 10, depending. I will go further depending on the compressor. It just depends. But typically a 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, somewhere there, 2-to-1, that's a good starting point. 3-to-1's pretty normal. Not all compressors have this next one. This is called knee. So what this does, if you look, as I turn it up and down, if you look at the angle right here, in fact, I'll make it a really harsh angle so we can really tell. It starts to smooth out that angle. So the knee adjusts when the threshold it really is, in a way, or when the compression starts. So if it's a hard knee, or a soft knee compressor, hard knee means when it finally hits that threshold, boom, it's going to start compressing right there. Soft knee compressors, they will start compressing before it gets to the threshold, slowly. They'll slowly start to get there, and they'll do that nice curve like that. See, they'll actually start compressing down here, and as it works its way up, it'll finally get to its full compression point. So it smooths the compression over a lot. So, since we are on his vocal here, let's take a look at what that does. Let's go find some part of the vocal here. Let's get to this part right in here.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors?
Okay, so now we have attack and release. So, faster the attack, nothing else is going to get through, right? We're not going to let anything through. That compressor is going to grab as quick as it can. Slower attack, transients or information will be able to get through before that compressor starts to kick in. Now, that's the basic way of explaining it. The real truth behind this is the compressor will always start compressing at the threshold. It just won't reach its full compression point for however long you tell it to. So if it's a 300 millisecond attack, when it hits the threshold, it's going to start compressing, but it's going to take 300 milliseconds for that compressor to finally reach the 2.3-to-1 ratio. So it does it over time. It's a little different than what we typically say of just like that's the attack time is how quickly it takes for it to attack. Release, same idea. How quickly the compressor lets go of information. As soon as audio drops below the threshold, how quickly is the compressor going to let go and kind of snap back to normal? So typically what I like to do is a fast attack if I'm trying to control, to tame, to make sure that nothing gets past a point. If I want to add a punch or add excitement or energy, I'll go slower attack because now some of that transient is allowed to get through, and then the compressor is going to grab and start to pull it back down. So you kind of get like this, boop, and then it kind of comes down, and you kind of control how much gets through. Release, same idea, is how fast do you want that compressor to snap back and be ready to compress again. Do you want to come back instantly? Do you want to like sit there and linger and continue to hold while the next thing comes in? Because it's all about control. If you want to add a sustain and make things sound bigger or longer than they are, you can add a longer release. And now the thing, that compressor is going to keep holding down, and it's going to keep sustaining through to the next part. Whereas if it's really, really fast, it's going to jump back and it's going to be instantly ready for the next thing that comes along. So let's play with this. Let's go like a slower attack here and like a super fast release.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors? From the outside. There was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks.
Okay, let's reverse that. We'll go super fast, attack, slow release.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors? From the outside. There was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here.
See, it's clamping, it's just holding. Let's go super fast release and then super fast attack.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors?
Bring this threshold up a little bit.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors? From the outside.
Okay, let's go super slow.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died, but how'd he chain the doors? From the outside.
So, like that, super slow on everything is kind of just like a leveler, just holds on everything and just lets it sit there and just, you're going to stay right here all the time. super, super fast, it kind of has this weird, for lack of a better word, like artifact sound where something doesn't sound like it's proper. So I'll typically go about a medium fast somewhere in here, kind of a faster release. With the release settings, now there is no like set, like you have to do this and this for vocals or this and this for that. It's all on the program information. So what you're putting it on. If are you putting it on a bass guitar? Are you putting it on a snare or a kick? Are you putting it on a vocal? How soon does it come back? If it's a snare drum, are they just hitting 2 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time? Or do they do rolls? Do they do all these different things? Because you want to kind of see and play with that. So let's keep messing with this vocal real quick.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors from the outside? There was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them or give them any shit, you get a little Dixie Mafia hit. He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors
Keep the knee down
from the outside? There was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them or give them any shit, you get a little Dixie.
Okay, it's a little bit louder because we are compressing, so let me add some gain back in.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors from the outside?
So it's just starting to control and tame. So when you get super loud, the compressor's saying, no, 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 we're going to pull you down. We're going to hold you right here. So this is about how loud as you're going to get. Unless he really pushes hard, and that compressor is just going to let more through. But it's just kind of holding him in there. So this is the great thing about compression, is we're taming things, right? We can tame and hold things into place. So or like that, we can also add excitement too. So, excuse me, this is, again, a variable threshold compressor. So another stock compressor that comes in here is the Bomb Factory. So 1176, no, we have some here, right? We have our black face 1176s. This is the same idea, same thing, plug-in version. These are fixed threshold compressors. What does that mean? That means you have no threshold control. Your input, the threshold is set. You have to drive the input to finally hit that threshold and then adjust from there. So however hard you're driving in with the input on the threshold, that's going to adjust what's going on. So let's take a look at that. So get rid of the other one.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors
I turn this down.
from the outside?
Turn this up.
There was a little Dixie Mafia hit.
It's not doing anything. We have no threshold control. But if I crank this up and bring this back down,
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the door?
you can see, because I pushed in the input, that fixed threshold, I'm finally hitting it. So the cool thing with this compressor is it's super fast. So, but it is backwards. So it's kind of funny. 1 is not the fastest. In fact, 1 is the slowest. So with 1176s and emulations of these, typically when you're to the left, it's the slowest. When you're to the right, it's the fastest. So the bigger the number, the faster it goes. Usually, not always. You just have to kind of play with it. So this in reality would be the slowest attack and the fastest release.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors from the outside? There was a little Dixie Mafia hit.
Like that, it takes a minute for that compressor to finally kick in. Now, if we change that, fast attack, fast release.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors from the outside?
It's a pretty fast reaction. Go slow release.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors?
See how slow it takes to come back. It's like that, trying to add some excitement.
He was cooking that crank, that's how he died. But how'd he chain the doors from the outside? There was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in a stick.
See, that compressor keeps trying to come back in between words to allow some of those transients to get through. Because we don't want to like squash it. We don't want to hold on to it all the time and just really just make sure it never moves. We want to still have some movement. He had dynamics. We want to express that, but we want to control the dynamics. So the other way to do that, which let's go look at the snare drum real quick. So let's grab a compressor. Again, I'm going to go, let's just grab the stock dynamic compressor limiter. Gain it up a little bit. I'll bypass it. So listen to the length. Put it back in. Like that. Because we went with a slower release and a faster attack, it's clamping down right away, but that compressor is just holding on and letting go. So we can extend like that, extend the notes of snare drums. We can make them longer than they should seem. It's really, really cool little trick right there that we can do. We can do the same thing with a bass. If I throw this on a bass, and we did like that, we did like a little bit slower attack, because finger picking or pick might attack slower than the snare drum, but like holding on, that slower release will sustain those notes longer, let them ring out, kind of clamp on. The other thing you can do, especially with percussive instruments, is saturation. So this is not going to be a stock plugin, I am sorry, but this is just a good point. So this is an emulation of a API preamp. So it's a transformer preamp, right? It's got a big, thick transformer in there. So when we saturate, we also compress. This is why electric guitars, like distorted electric guitars, are very fat on their signal, on their wave that we see. There's not like a lot of jumping and anything like that because they're solid. So we can use this. So first I'll leave it bypass for now. Let me make sure this is cranked though. So I want you to watch the level here next to the fader. Okay, so our green, our average level, is hitting about this 12 point, and then our peak is hitting at that plus 12, right, roughly? Let me put this in. Now granted, it sounds a little dirty because we're hitting it so hard, but you saw we just took 12 dB off with saturation. We're not compressing, really. It's just saturating the top of that transient so much, it's compressing and bringing it down. So this can be kind of a cool way, too, to do compression and get kind of like a dirty sound of things. I do that. Let's grab a compressor. Take these off. Oh, nice snare drum. All of a sudden it sounds like he's just like just going for it, hitting it super hard, because we use compression and saturation basically to do that. So let's look at another style. Again, we'll come over here to the bass. Let's just look at the DI for a minute. Let's see if I can go find a long note. go down here to the end. So if you notice, like those harmonics almost hold on a little bit longer because again, we're compressing, just holding on and saying, no, 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 keep coming, and we're going to keep holding, and you're going to keep sustaining out. So you can use compression to make your mixes more punchy. You can bring out energy, things like that. You can sustain, you can hold on to things. So let's look at our overhead. Well, let's look at our rooms real quick. See if we can do this here. What I'm going to grab that bomb factory again. Put this in what's called all buttons mode. Basically, all the ratio buttons are in. This is a very specific setting you can do with this thing. It can be really cool. Now, with that, let's do this now. Just listen to the one. At the end of the song. Let's get into here. Sounds kind of crazy, right? But let's put this on all of them. Let me solo up the drums. We'll take them off. Pretty normal drum sound. Go back in. So we get some crazy pumping sound. So when using drum room mics, things like that, we can create like this faux energy really easily. You could even take your, let's say, your overheads and send them to another track, throw some EQ, right? Take out the high end of this new track to make it sound like it's further away, add something like this on. All of a sudden you have like this crazy pumping energy you can blend into your drums that just make it sound big and bombastic, just bah, bah, God, bah. It gives this great rock drum or just heavy drum sound. It's really, really cool that you can do. So these are all little tricks and stuff. Let's see, what else can we kind of cover? Again, like with guitars, I typically don't do much, with electrics at least. If we look here, I mean, look at the file, they're pretty fat. Like compared to drums, like you see the transient, you see how they're big and then they're small, big and small. So we want to control these usually. But with electric guitars, there's not much we can do. Even the acoustic guitar isn't that crazy. If we look at it here, I mean, it's pretty good. He was hitting it pretty hard. All right, so what I'm gonna do is just kind of start going through and just adding some compression stuff. So let's get rid of that for now. Let's find a little spot to loop here, and I'll just do some quick compression.
Out in a wreck when his brakes went out on his way home from his mother's house. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them or give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob.
So here it is. So you notice like that when we're compressing, because we're adding gain back in, we're adding stuff back in. Right? We're gaining up the quieter things. It's one thing that happens with compression you do have to be careful with. Like that, if we go slower attack, faster release, we're letting some of that transient through. So that compressor's not kicking in until a little bit later, so that transient, that punch comes through, and then it grabs on the other stuff and starts to bring it back down. So we can actually make things punchy, really poke through a little bit more.
Out in a wreck when his brakes went out on his way home from his mother's house. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. If you cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. Senator died, he got shot at the out in a wreck when his brakes went out on his way home from his mother's house. It was a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. You cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit. There's a mob out here in the sticks. If you cross them, won't give them any shit. You get a little Dixie Mafia hit.
I just noticed we didn't EQ the this guy right here, the solo. Just grab an EQ real quick. Let's touch on that.
Senator died, he got shot at the gate.
All right, I'm gonna start from right here. So I'm gonna take everything out. Here's all of our EQs, and our compressors are gone, right? So these are all bypassed. Here it is. Add compressors back in. EQ.
Senator died, he got shot at the gate.
Everything out.
Prison guard said he was trying to escape. Hattie said he hated
Yeah.
when it happened that way. If he'd have kept his mouth shut, he might be here today. Another little Dixie Mafia hit.
So it's a little bit brighter, a little bit more control, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to touch on this briefly. We'll talk about this more in mastering. but I'm sure this will be a question. What about compression on the 2-bus or the mix, right, or the full mix or anything like that? Typically with something like that, you don't want to go overboard because you can really destroy it really quickly. Always do anything and everything you can to control back here in individual channels. Don't start here. But let's try and set this up and see. Now, of course, my voice is going through here too, but let's set this up and see what we can do. It's like there. I just pulled the attack all the way down, and it immediately just pulled everything. Same thing with the release. You go too fast in the release, everything just kind of pulls down and holds, which is not terrible, but we still want some energy. So like there, as I pulled that threshold down, I'll do it again. I'll leave this down here. Things start to fart out of that. So you don't want to do a lot at this kind of stage. Typically what we call gluing a mix. You're just doing just enough, just a little bit, like fast, kind of faster compressions, faster release, slower attack, to just kind of hold everything. So anything trying to get through, might not. Like we can back this down a little bit. We're not doing much of anything. It's just catching little things, which typically are your transients, your kick and your snare. So we'll get into more of that when we get into the mastering side about using compression on the 2-bus, but focus a lot on controlling things in here. You really want to kind of hone in and control what you're doing on all this stuff. And not everything's going to need a compressor, not everything's going to need EQ. It's kind of up to you to make that decision. You have to make the artistic decision of what are you trying to do, what are you trying to accomplish. Don't just throw it on there and be like, I'm just going to throw it on there and just tweak knobs, because if you listen to it, you're like, you know what, this needs to be brighter, this needs to be poke out more, it needs to be more dull, it needs to have more of like a honky sound, or it needs to be more open, it needs to, you need to contain it, control it, you need to make it more bombastic. Go in with EQ and compression and have a plan of attack of what you're trying to accomplish. If you go in just using these tools, thinking it's just automatically going to make it better, you can do more harm than good. So listen to it, use your ears, trust your ears. You have good ears. You know what you like. You know how you like things to sound. Trust yourself. And if you try something and it doesn't come out the way you want, or it's not sounding the way you want, or someone else said, oh man, it doesn't sound good or whatever, then go back and tweak. Go use reference tracks. This is why reference tracks are so good. You listen to music, every day, you know what sounds good, so just try and go emulate it. Just tweak and turn knobs. There is no magic formula to just, every kick drum has to be EQ'd like this, da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't work that way. All the engineers that have worked on all the major hits over however many but decades and decades, that's what they did. They just turned knobs and found the good things and the bad things, accentuated the good things, got rid of the bad things, all of that stuff. If you're afraid of making crazy boosts or things like this, just try cutting first. Boosting, cuts are always better than boosts, but if you have to boost or you feel like something is going to be good there, go for it. Don't be afraid. The worst thing can happen is you overboost and you go back and listen to it the next day, like, oh man, it sounds terrible, and you go back and adjust the EQ. It's not the end of the world. So the more you do it, the better you'll get. All right, guys, I'm going to hop downstairs just to make sure everything got answered. If you have any extra questions or anything, always feel free to email us, contact@centraloregonrecording.com. Yeah, this is kind of where we're at for now. So next week is going to be reverb delay. We will start dealing with putting things in spaces and really messing with that back and forth. And then we should be good. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week. Again, any questions, just feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, stay safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.